Hello YouTube, welcome back to the Atreyu Locs channel. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. I hope you guys are enjoying this beautiful Saturday or whenever you may happen to watch this. As you're coming in, please be sure to hit the like button and consider subscribing. Doing those things as well as watching the entire video really helps the channel grow. In today's video, we are going to be talking about hair that grows away from your locks. Still, many people don't really understand what this is, this phenomenon, so I'm going to keep making videos until it is common knowledge. Let's get to it. So I got a comment from Amanda MC. She writes, "Thank you. I'm 7 weeks into my journey and I noticed that my locks are growing in this way. I can see a lot of growth, but all from my roots. I thought everyone's grew this way. It wasn't clear from your video how this can cause breakage. Is this in the case of mature locks?" Okay, so let me just first say that if your locks are still in the baby phase or the early phases of your lock journey, then the concept of hair growing away from your locks is really not something that you need to worry about. You are correct that pretty much everyone goes through that during those early months, right? You get your hair maintained, whatever technique you're gonna use, and then you notice that there's a lot of frizz, your parts disappear, and you're just like, where are all these hairs coming from? One of the main reasons that you have all of that frizz, especially at the level of your scalp, is because those hairs are not yet trained to go into the lock. For instance, if you retwist, a lot of those hairs are not used to going in that coiling motion. So with time and friction, the hairs will escape. Also, if you happen to exercise or sweat a lot at your scalp and you have natural curly textured hair, then a lot of those hairs will escape from the lock as well as revert back to their curly natural state. So one of the reasons that you get what you've been experiencing is just because, one, your hair is not really trained to enter and stay in the lock, to be coiled up in that fashion, but also it's just a part of the process. So what we do if we have manicured locks is we get our hair retwisted or interlocked or whatever method we use every so often to reincorporate those hairs back into the lock. So you're correct, Amanda, that everyone does go through that. It doesn't matter if you have straight hair or very curly, kinky hair, you're gonna encounter frizz at the level of the scalp. It's inevitable. So yes, I would say that once your locks have completed the budding phase, where you get the little random knots along your starter locks, once the entire starter lock is essentially locked up or there's budding all along it or throughout the majority of it, then you can start to ask the question, does your hair grow away from your locks? You will know that your hair grows away from your locks at that point if you pay attention to what is happening at the level of the scalp. If you get maintenance and it's been a few weeks and you can still very clearly see your parts and there's minimal mirroring occurring, then that's an indication that your hair does not grow away from your locks. That is telling you that, hey, your hair is staying in the lock. That new growth that's growing out of your scalp is growing into your lock. So you don't have as much frizz at the level of the scalp. You may have frizz along the length of your lock, but in terms of the new hairs that are coming out of your scalp, not much. The new growth is there, it's just a part of your lock. I kind of liken it almost to when someone gets their hair interlocked. You know how there are really no loose hairs when a person gets their hair interlocked? There's new growth if it's been some time, but there are really no loose hairs at the level of the scalp. It's kind of like that. That's kind of how it is for someone who has hair that does not grow away from their locks. But I am not that lucky. So I have hair that definitely grows away from my locks. And even when I was retwisting every month, it would look like I hadn't retwisted after just 2 weeks. And it wasn't breakage. It's just the way my new growth grew and continues to grow to this day. So if you've recently gotten maintenance on your hair, and let's say it's been a couple of weeks, and you look at your scalp, if you're not really able to see it clearly, meaning there's a lot of frizz, there's a lot of free hair, just kind of chilling at your scalp, then that's an indication that your hair grows away from your locks. Some people will erroneously call this breakage. Just got a comment last week, someone trying to tell me that what I was encountering was breakage, but I've done nothing to have breakage. It's not breakage, it's the fact that that new growth is not growing into your locks. Now there are things that you can do to help with this. I've mentioned it several times, but now I use the braid technique, and you can check out that video to learn more about that. That has helped immensely to combat this phenomenon of hair growing away from my locks. And honestly, it's been the best thing. It's definitely saved a lot of my locks. Now, the second part of your question was you weren't sure how this can lead to breakage. When I say breakage, I'm referring to the lock itself. Now, what happens over time, if you have hair that grows away from your locks, is that as your hair grows out, you get my, so you have a lock, as your hair grows, instead of staying in the lock and strengthening that lock, it grows away, right? So with time, the lock will get thinner and thinner because this hair that should be like that is like that. So this now thin part, eventually with time, as you go through the hair growth cycles, whatever it is for your body, you will eventually lose these hairs that are still attached to the scalp. And as you lose these, and as more of these hairs grow away, then that leaves fewer and fewer strands that are actually hanging on to the lock itself. And so eventually, if you don't do anything to reincorporate this hair back into the lock, then that's how you can experience breakage. So just to recap, anyone that is still in their first year, maybe even first year 6 months, because everyone locks at different rates. It takes people different lengths of time for their hair to lock up. But basically, when you're still in the baby phase, you don't need to worry about the concept of your hair growing away from your locks. However, once your hair is fully locked, then you should start to pay attention to your scalp and how the hair that's coming out of your scalp, that new growth, is behaving, whether or not it's staying in the lock or growing away from the lock. If the new growth is growing away from the lock, then you need to do something to get that hair back into the lock. So it might be the braid technique, it might be interlocking, it could be crocheting. There are many different things that you can use to reincorporate that hair back into the lock, but something needs to be done so that you keep the lock fortified. Amanda, I hope this has answered your question. If anyone else has questions, please leave them down in the comment section. And also while you're down there, let me know if you have hair that grows away from your locks or not. If you do, what do you do to keep your locks on your head? As always, if you choose to love, do so unconditionally, because loving with conditions conditions the heart to not really love at all. Atreyu is out.